I think you should open by just
Should I?
asking the question.
If you eat ass and watch anime.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the ultimate anime, the greatest anime of all time. But I need to know if you guys think eating ass is mealy as fuck.
I think eating ass is most likely mealy as fuck.
It is mealy as fuck, I bet.
It's definitely mealy.
Yeah.
There's
Definitely
no question.
mealy.
Just look at a beehole and you immediately think that looks mealy as fuck.
Is it objectively bad to be mealy?
Not objectively.
No, I think that's subjective because it's like
Well,
I mean,
Objective,
Maddox
that's
loves
mealy.
mealy as fuck red delicious apples.
yeah.
So, like, obviously he eats beehole day and night.
Because I like Honey Crisp and like rave apples, but I think the mealy, texture of the Red Delicious tastes like shit. So
Red Delicious is garbaggio, and you get that shit stuck in your teeth, and it's like, this just tastes like starch.
Mm-hmm.
Like butthole starch.
Exactly.
Well, the less important thing is that it should be if you are eating ass and it's mealy, I mean, liking it isn't a bad thing, but you have to justify your morals and admit that you do. Like if you do eat ass, you have to admit it. Otherwise,
right.
I'm morally, I just can't, that doesn't sit right with me.
I
If
mean,
you do
there
eat
was,
ass
like
like Dick Masterson and you don't admit it, then that's offensive to me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's even a movement among, like, musicians to talk about how great it is to eat ass.
I mean, it's been...
And I thought it was a psyop, but, like, I think it's actually... These people are genuinely trying to get people to admit their sins.
It's been a big deal that, like, eating ass is, like, the mainstream thing in rap culture for, like, the
normalizing
past
ass.
5-10 years.
You know, there's, like, a conspiracy that is normalizing some kind of degeneracy, and
good.
People are saying it's
my whole career's about
pushing the
normalizing degeneracy.
LGBT agenda. I've heard that argument from people. It's crazy.
Good.
I agree.
So... We fucking
That's what gay pride is all about. It's June.
I'm DigiNay. With me is May.
Why?
And Butthole Weeb is at our house.
Why?
I'm here, kids.
We let somebody who goes by the name Butthole Weeb come to our house.
Yeah.
A man known for calling into podcasts and doing super chats in which he asks people if they eat ass and watch anime. But, we talked to him. He seemed like a pretty cool guy, and he's also like dying. So we were like, let's do some Make-A-Wish Foundation shit.
Yeah.
Like bring him over and hang out before he literally dies.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get to come another time and not be dead.
I'll be fine. I'll survive through it.
He's literally necking a 40 as he says this.
Yep.
Miller High Life, good taste.
Supreme gentleman.
That was always my go-to 40 drink when I was drinking 40s.
I mean, we all agree that we're an-autisms, but I'm also an-alcohol, so
yeah.
I might as well neck a 40 while we're doing this.
I mean, it just takes me back. It takes me back to when I was your age and drinking Miller High Life 40s. Like,
except for you weren't dying.
I'm not from Virginia, so I didn't know what else to buy. Otherwise, I would have bought, like, better bum wine, but I'm out, so.
Well, so you... you in addition to having a meme about asking people if they eat ass and watch anime, you also have one particular anime that you stand for harder than anyone else. And it's not that it's not a popular show, but no one stands for it the way that you do.
Very true.
What is that?
It's GOSICK.
GOSICK.
The anime known as GOSICK. Or Gothic in other circles.
Yes, it's
and also
Goshiku.
Goshiku, yep. GOSICK. The greatest anime ever made.
And this may surprise people to know this about somebody called Butthole Weeb, but you are actually like pretty good at reading and understanding Japanese, and you've read all of the GOSICK novels.
Yes, I have. Yep.
In Japanese.
Yes.
Which is rare because only one of them was ever translated to English officially. I read it when I was like, 17 or 18, because it would have been like 2008 or 9 when like Tokyo Pop was first doing light novels, and that did not go anywhere. And when when the manga market crashed when the economy of the world crashed in 2008, it literally put an end to light novels for like 3 years. And like I was all about light novels, and Andrew Cunningham, who translated the Boogie Pop light novels, who I also followed his blog, Eastern Standard, I was a huge fan, so when he translated GOSICK, I was like, oh, I'll read this just because he translated it and it has a goth lolly on it. And I had read it, and even though, like, the first book is basically just, like, a standard Sherlock Holmes-style mystery story. It's like, you know, there is, like, an introductory segment where we sort of meet the main characters, which is kind of expanded on in the anime to create the whole first episode. So, like, the first episode actually kind of, like, elongates the very beginning of the book, and then the second and third episodes dramatically truncate the rest of the book. So like when the first book had come out, because nothing else ever came out from it, that was my whole impression of GOSICK, and like I really loved the character design of Victorique as she is handled in the manga. The anime makes her kind of like chubbier and cuter and smaller, like more doll-like. More moe for sure. And when it first came out, I was excited because I was hoping that it would be like a very direct adaptation so that I would not need to ever read the novels because they never got translated into English. When the anime came out and the change... I don't know why I really hated the change in character design so much because, like, watching the show now, I love the character designs. I think they look great. I think Victorique in particular, I mean, all her expressions are great. All her outfits are great. There's
a sausage hair looking bitch.
She's gonna probably be on the thumbnail.
Her name was make her the thumbnail. Her name was Marion. I had to get on Mal. 0 favorites. 0 favorites.
I think she's supposed to be ugly, though, right? Like, she looks like she was designed to be, like, an ugly character. Like, representation, you know? That's what I'm saying.
Well,
it's good.
The only problem is that she had
small eyes and, like, a weird potato face.
Yes.
But she had, like, a considerable amount of screen time, so it's a little odd.
Well, it's also the episode that has her has, like, the worst animation. So, it's doubling down. Like, it's a bad character design with bad animation, and it's just really hard to look at whenever she's on screen. But you know.
And boy, is she on screen.
Definitely has to be the thumbnail.
I'm sorry. Sorry to anybody who looks like her.
You said that she had, like, alternative outfits, and I'm really surprised that they would give a character, because, like, it literally looks like they just didn't care at all about making it look like a good character.
In GOSICK, a lot of them do, except for Cujo. Cujo is really the one standout that doesn't really get a lot of outfit changes.
Well, I think he just has... I mean... I think that, like, what Cujo represents, I mean, I don't know how quickly I'm going to just start jumping into analysis here.
That's fine.
There's plenty, but, like, because you're also a fan of Chivalry of a Failed Knight.
I am.
And that show and this show are, like, very, very similar in terms of, like, the characterization, and, like, both of them, the main character, like, is black-themed. It's, like, he is... Yeah. It's sort of, in my mind, so... This is gonna get complicated because it's hard for me to explain this without talking about gender roles heavily, and I know everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, you make everything trans now because you came out as trans."
Well, I want you to break it down because when you kind of compared the two last night, I often just think about it within like genres as to like Chivalry of a Failed Knight is it's kind of just like the most generic supernatural like high school fantasy anime, and then you were comparing it to GOSICK, and you had mentioned that you had a comparison between the two, so I actually want you to like dive in on why you compare them so heavily.
I tend to think more in terms of archetypes within the story, and like GOSICK is a mystery story, but like the thing about the anime, and you seem to like this about the show, that it kind of you kind of regarded it as cutting everything unnecessary from the books.
Yes.
Because the show is really focused on like the broad central themes and like the characterization. It's like it's really mostly about the ways that the characters change in each arc. And so the arcs themselves are not very interesting. Like, the actual plots of, like, who the villain of the arc is, what the mystery of the arc is, in the anime, is, like, basically, like, 2 text dumps. There'll be, like, a character explains what happened was the mystery, and then later you get an explanation of, like, who was the killer, and, like, that's most of it. You don't, like, spend a lot of time, like, getting engrossed in the mystery the way you would in like Detective Conan or something, where the mystery is the entire point of the episode and there's almost no character growth. It like happens once every 2 seasons or something. This show, like, they're condensing like the entire, because as you said, the books like they tell a story for a while, and then like basically the story is over, and then it's just about the main characters like solving mysteries. Book
yes, that's what I was gonna get at. Is that you just took the words out of my mouth. What I was gonna say when you were originally saying like how like the first book's real short mystery was really condensed in like episode 2 and 3 of GOSICK. I'm not gonna go into spoilers fully for like the last half because the show there is a plot that happens later that you guys haven't seen yet that isn't really that mystery focused, but I will say GOSICK ends almost in the same way that it begins. Like it is just like a, you know, case by case mystery story. And, you know, GOSICK, the 4 novels after just GOSICK is over. Victorique and Cujo in Saville, the made-up European country that the anime covers. After that, there's the books GOSICK Red, Blue, Pink, and Green. And that's where it's like years later, and it's just, if you want to jerk off to Detective Conan, just read those. Well, you have to know, you have to study hiragana for a long time, but if you want to read them, that's what...
I mean, I guess I would say that, like, GOSICK, it wears the clothes of a mystery novel, but it's really more of, like, a YA, like, a standard light novel, like, in that it's a romance-focused, like, it's about 2 teenagers sort of, you know, helping each other out with their problems, you know? And, like, in the cases of, and I don't know how much personal information you want me to divulge about you, Butthole, but I know you are a 3rd son, and that the main character of the show is also a 3rd son.
Here's the analysis.
So I couldn't help but notice that, like the 3rd son is somebody with, like, a lot of expectation placed because their older brothers or their father are already successful. In his case, he's the 3rd son of, like, an imperial general, so it's like his dad's important, his brothers have done important things, one of his brothers is, like, uber smart, you know? So he just kind of, like, feels... I feel like the character is in a position where he's like, I'm never going to be the smartest or the best, because, like, I already know my brothers are going to, like, be the ones who, like, inherit my father's legacy. Like, what is there for me to accomplish? Like, what can I do? And, like, he finds Victorique, who is, like, this incredible genius, but emotionally retarded and autistic. And she just hangs out at the top of this gigantic labyrinthine library in a garden and reads books all day. So, like, you know, he's immediately impressed with her because she's, like, really smart, and he appreciates that. But, like, in his mind, she's also kind of, like, an idiot because she's so emotionally, like, stunted. And in her mind, he's kind of an idiot because he's, like, kind of a fuckboy and kind of acts like a bitch. But, like, the more that he is capable of, you know, manning up and just, like, taking care of her, the more that she is able to be honest with her emotions and not treat him like a dick and, you know, figure out how to communicate. So it's like, you know, the more that they come together, it's like she can be, you know, she can feel safer and he can feel like he has a sense of purpose in that she literally would not be able to feel safer without him, you know? So, like, and that's essentially the, you know, what a lot of light novels, I think, you know, stuff like Sword Art Online tries to tell a story like this as well, where, like, the idea is, like, oh, Asuna is, like, the super strong, steadfast girl, and
Femme
like
fatale.
And like Kirito will be like the, you know, the male figure who like protects her. But the problem is that in that show, Asuna is the logical one, and Kirito is just a screaming man baby retard. And like it's just because the narrative gives him like new type superpowers that he happens to be able to like just be faster and better than anybody else. And there's no justification because it's just like, you know, or there's no exploration of like what manner of thinking he is using to like outsmart all these people, you know. It's just like he's just a superpowered badass. And it's like with these shows, like the characters actually have to learn something and grow. Or like this Cujo fucking sucks at the start of GOSICK. He's like, even when he tries to do like something like masculine, he's like overly macho at first, where he's like shoving her out of the way and like, I'll protect you, you know. And you were saying that you really hate that scene because of just like having to watch him be like kind of an asshole like that.
Yeah, in regards to like when you said like me being like, you know, the youngest of two brothers, they're actually like they're my half brothers, so that's why I was mostly curious to see your guys' like centered analysis on this show as to where like there's things in there that I haven't thought about.
Right.
So that's one of those things that actually, piques my interest. But I don't really relate to Cujo as much as you think I would. Yeah. I think that for the narrative of GOSICK, him being a fuckboy at the start is very important. And I understand that we haven't got into the nitty gritty of like the last half of GOSICK, but that's why I like him. And I hate that scene where he gets beat up because he's always putting himself in that role because he is a fuckboy. But to me, there's something kind of admirable about it. Yeah, and that's what makes him so charming.
I mean, I love shows that are about characters whose relationship is all about like figuring out how much self-sacrifice is the right amount for each of them, because like you have a character who's like, oh, I'm just gonna throw myself in front of a gun to protect you, like that's how he like literally in the first book he just like throws himself in front of a gun, and like for her it's kind of like, well, okay, like it's like it's nice that somebody wants to protect me, but like why do I have to be like, why can't I be the one to take the bullet for you, like, and that kind of conversation, like the anime is Shiryuki Hime. Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
Yeah, that show is like almost centered on that question of like these two characters both want to protect one another, and like so it's like for them they're always going to put themselves in danger to protect the other person, but the other person would rather it be them who's putting themselves in danger. So it's like, well, obviously we need to stop worrying about one another and just work together, because like neither one of us wants to be left out. Neither one of us wants to be the one who's just getting taken care of. So like, let's just work together on everything. And like that's kind of the way that these two I feel like are approaching, but like it's difficult because Victorique has a really dark past that we haven't really even gotten into because we only watched the first half.
Right.
But I assume the second half explores a lot more of her history.
And that dynamic I think is important because you have to, at the end of the day, look at what the overall like full plot is. It's a mystery show. So that dynamic that Cujo and Victorique have of like it kind of, when it comes to
women are the greatest mystery of all. If Cujo can solve the mystery of Victorique, then she can solve the mystery of everything else.
It's like, well, with those characteristics that you noted, it's like, well, Cujo will jump in front just to make sure that Victorique's okay, but then Victorique's like an emotional fucking putz and autistic. It's like that dynamic is what makes the mystery solving kind of have its flavor in the later in the books, at least. Like, and since that's all it is, there's nothing really much deeper than their trip in Europe and the overall story. And you guys have already watched half of it, so most of it. But there's some things about Victorique that are important that you'll see. But the way that her and Cujo act now is very important for their dynamic later in the books.
Right.
So it's pretty keen, especially like how they act in the anime now. Like at the start is important.
I mean,
some people might take that for granted, but
it's this is a show that I will say that like watching the first half, I enjoyed it, and particularly because I not only connect with Victorique as a character, but just think that she looks amazing and is fucking adorable. And also she's voiced by Yuki Aoi, who's like my favorite voice actress. So,
which I was shocked that you liked her so much on the second go around. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, well, I loved the character in the book. Like, I had read the book, I loved the character when I read the book, and to me, the anime was like, oh, this is like a bastardization of the character because it doesn't capture what I... Well, particularly just aesthetically, that like she looked so different, and that the story felt like it was cutting so much from the book that I was like, oh, this is like a worse version, so just fuck this, But like watching it, having not read the book in fucking 12 years, and only vaguely remembering it, like when I started up the first episode, the very first scene, pretty much, is Cujo reading a letter from his dad that says like, you need to become a man, basically, and it's like, okay. I already understand the entire show. Like, I already know everything that's going to happen because, like, the plot is this boy has to grow up to be a man. So, like, how is he going to do that? through the influence of a woman that he falls in love with. So, like, it's obviously Victorique. There's really no competing girls in the show. So,
well, there's one, but she's not important. You know,
like the anime really seems like it's trying to brush her under the rug. Like forget about her.
As they should.
Because like light novels have a tendency to do this thing where at the very start they will have the other girls like just kind of around so that it's like, hey, remember when you like if this was your favorite arc. This girl is still in the story, so you can, you know, say, oh, my girl's not forgotten about. But, like, the anime will make those scenes so short. Yeah. And it's, like, literally, like, the first minute of the episode she's around. And it's just, yeah, you're done. No need for that bitch to be here anymore.
And I don't really think you should, like, feel bad about not... Because I understand you liked the 12 episodes you watched, roughly, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think you should, you know, think it's a bad thing that you... didn't really capture in your first experience of reading the book what the anime would be, because you don't autistically love it as much as I do. Like, I have gone out of my way to analyze everything about this show. And I know you have a very short history with it, so I can understand that there's some things that I appreciate that, and a lot of GOSICK fans appreciate that you don't. But on the other end, there's also stuff that you're picking up that I didn't get either. So
well, you have the ability to, because like if you've read the source material, you can fill in the gaps in the show. And like there's a lot of people, like for me, I tend to take an anime on its own merits, because it's like if the show is like not as rich as the source material, then I'd rather consume the source material. But it's like if you already have consumed the source material and the anime, while maybe not as good, is still like fully functional and like gives you additional coloring into certain things where it's like, okay, well now I have voices to the characters, now I have designs and art, color, and you know, like animation. So like even if it just is kind of a highlight reel of the books, it's nice to have that in addition to the books. I can't read Japanese though, so it's like, you know, for me it's like a frustration that, oh, if only it had been like Sangatsu no Lion, where like I still want to read that manga, but watching the anime was such a fulfilling experience, and like obviously adds lots of things, even if it might change certain things, like, you know, which would make it worth reading the manga as well. Like, I don't automatically assume that the manga will be a like vastly better experience, you know.
Right.
And watching this anime, it's not that I assume that the novels are like vastly superior, because again, I think the broad strokes of it are communicated well by the show. And if anything, like, I don't really care that much about the mysteries.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Like, I don't know if I would even give a fuck.
That's even my least favorite part about it, honestly. I'm just the romance boy.
Right. And so it's kind of like, you know, I mean, in that way, like, the show, like, as a romance, it's fine, but it's, like, it's not, like, I could just watch Toradora, which is, like, the same story, the same, like, character dynamic,
you did
way
compare those, didn't you?
Yeah, I think
go into that a little bit.
I mean, they're very similar types of, like, tsundere, where both of them are, like, really smart girls who are really emotionally stunted because they just don't know how to talk to people, and, like, they want to confess to someone, or they want to be emotionally honest, they have no idea how, and they are always aggressive, and it's because of the weirdness of their family, you know, like in Taiga's case, her dad is like a sleazy, like, wasn't he like a gigolo or something? He was like a guy in a white suit.
Something like that, but wasn't her mom like rich or something?
Yeah, I think her dad was rich.
Yeah.
I don't know if her mom was still in the picture. I think her mom might have been dead or something.
I mean, it's been 8 years since I watched the fucking show.
And and Ryuji's dad was dead. I mean, it's like essentially, you know, like a man without a father figure and a girl without a mother figure coming together to like fulfill like the empty, like, you know, to teach one another how to be a better man/woman by, you know, Taiga teaching Ryuji to be less of a pushover baby bitch, and Ryuji teaching Taiga to be less of a cunt. And that's basically the same thing going on in GOSICK. Granted, it's funny because actually in GOSICK, the guy like just kind of seems to like he's like an actual simp. Like he enjoys getting pushed around. Like Ryuji does not enjoy getting pushed around. He tries to sort that out of Taiga. Kujo is just like a pain slut.
I wouldn't know if Kujo, because I don't really know if he enjoys it. But the one disconnect I have is I don't really think the dynamic between Taiga and Ryuji and Victorique and Kujo is like the same experience, kind of like back when we were talking about Rakudai Kishino Cavalry, which is almost on the opposite end. Ikki's already a badass. He's already he's not a fuckboy like Kujo who has to grow up and get his manhood. Ryuji was I compare him closer to Ikki Kurigane than I do Kujo, because Kujo has like
on the sliding spectrum of usefulness. Like Ryuji is like a little bit more grown up already, in a sense. Like Ryuji's like really mature at the start of the story, I guess, and like mellow, but yeah, I think they all kind of represent like a similar angle on like why romance is good, you know, like, hey, here's good reasons.
Which is why I think you so easily analyzed why it wasn't my favorite genre, because you were kind of putting all these shows that I like together and etching out the reasons I like them so much.
They're all shows I like too, because I'm a big romance nerd as well. You know, I have my 6 things I want from anime romance video that everybody should look up and watch.
It's a good video.
It's a good video for if you want to learn how to have a good relationship and get laid, because it got me laid.
And it'll explain to you what is a Karashi Kanojo no Jijo.
Yes, Kare Kano.
What is an Kano?
One of the best anime, in my opinion, ever made. But and it also has similar themes. Although in that case, it takes the tack of both characters are like already badasses, which I guess Rakudai. Because the thing about Rakudai that, like, I like that show, but, like, the main guy is, like, they made him just more powerful than anybody, and it's, like, even though, like, they kind of have, like, a power duo thing going on with him and the girl, he's always just, like, abjectly stronger than her, and the same goes with, like, Kirito and Asuda, whereas, like, in Kare Kano, like, the characters are legitimately, like, on equal footing. I mean, it's also not a fantasy action show, but, like, you know, they are both just really fucking intelligent. The only difference is, like, the money. Like, the guy comes from a rich family and she comes from a broke family, you know?
And with Rakudai, the way they present it is what I would describe, for an example, would be a zero to hero story, but Ikki was always a hero. Like, he was always that badass and that powerful, but they try to present it as, like, you know, like when he beats Stella in the first episode.
He's an overdog posing as underdog.
Exactly.
As I call it.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And then, really with that, even if we're talking about my favorites, I mean, obviously, I know we were talking about GOSICK and Toradora and all that. The only reason Rakudai is my number 4 in my top 10 is because the source material. I passed it around in high school, so it's like a nostalgia thing.
Right.
By no means do I think it's like I think it is a very cookie-cutter romance story, but it just happens to be something that...
Well, it's just, has so much, like, it's just that it actually does the romance right, and, like,
it does.
That's
Episode
so
4.
much more than you can say about any other light novel. It's just, like, so many light novels are written by people who seem like they've never spoken to anyone or had a relationship. They are purely, like, writing a fantasy, and, like, for me, I don't know, I guess... For me, anime is most valuable when it's, like, teaching me something that I can apply to the real world. Like, yeah, these characters are acting in ways that if I acted that way, I, too, would have the successes that they have. And, like, being able to recognize that, you know, is something you have to, like, develop by, like, you know, recognizing what shows have, like, causal patterns that make sense, as opposed to, like... you know, just, like, made-up bullshit that would not function in reality, you know?
And my favorites don't really go that way. I like that way of thinking because it's more interesting when it comes to, like, when you look at my favorites list and want to analyze it. But every single one of the shows that have ever cracked my top 10, you might be able to find a way to connect them, but especially not with GOSICK, but they all have a different element to me that I don't really think, you know, there's no consistency there. Like, Kyoso Giga in real life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't, like, there's no in-between there. It's just kind of like...
There's always, like, a through line, but it's complicated. Because it's like, you know, every show you like says something about you.
True.
You know, but it's like... They're not all saying the same thing necessarily, but it's like there can be bleed over. It's like a bunch of like
you see a pattern.
a bunch of Venn diagram, you know, like with a ton of circles, and it's like there's a lot of overlap in why you would like this show and this show, but then there's other stuff that makes them different, which is why they both deserve to exist, you know. And like in the case of GOSICK, like it is pretty unique. Like I don't know another like YA like light novel style like romance that approaches it as a mystery and does it successfully, you know. And again, like the characters are well realized for like thematically, like all the side characters and stuff, like they all play off the central themes. So like even with how little the mysteries are actually explored in the anime, you can still kind of see how these characters like reflect like even like worse extreme versions of like the main characters, you know.
And I think that was done deliberately, because if you notice while watching GOSICK, they make the cast extremely like it's very minimum. Like they keep it to a minimum, is what I should say.
I guess I would describe it as a very thematically tight story. Like everything in it ties into the message it's trying to send about its characters, and like you know the oftentimes like the violence, the crimes that are committed are the results of like problematic relationships. You know, like relationships that don't go like whatever Cujo is doing right with Victorique, these people are doing wrong in their relationships, which is leading to murder, you know?
But they, like I said, they keep the cast to very minimalistic. So to me, when it comes to, say, like Cujo, Victorique, and Gravel, Victorique's older brother, for a mystery story, if you'll notice, like when I wrote like a 40,000 word blog on GOSICK like years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, just analyzing the whole thing, and what you said was the perfect way I could describe it as someone who has I have the knowledge of what's in the books and what would be necessary to cut out of an anime adaptation.
Right.
And the best phrase I used in that entire blog was the most tight-knit written story I've seen. Like they keep things to a minimum where they should be, as to where it might be a lot more bloated in the books, and the parts that are bloated aren't interesting. So if you notice that even like the girl with the retarded hair that you're probably going to make the thumbnail of this, like you notice that like they barely even go as far as saying her name.
Right.
All of the background characters in GOSICK are kind of like that. Like Cujo and Victorique are the biggest vocal point, and they will always emphasize that.
Yeah. So it's a very Spartan presentation of the story.
Yes.
I guess. Yeah. And like, I consider it to be, to me, this was a good show to not pay your full attention to, because like it's because
no one gives a fuck about the mysteries, so it's like,
right,
you know,
like,
that's not the point of the show.
The broad strokes of the story are easy to keep track of, where it's like every time I do, like we were like just kind of talking and stuff over the show, or like, you know, half paying attention a lot of the time, but like anytime I was paying attention, it was like, oh, I can immediately tell what's happening, because like it's,
you know, what's happening, and you can get immersed into it if you
right.
want to pay your full attention, or if you don't, you know.
And like, which I mean, that might sound like I'm like literally like damning it with faint praise, because like obviously I do not consider this the greatest anime of all time, as
motherfucker.
You do. Or
motherfucker.
I would have to pay my full attention to what I would consider the greatest anime of all time. But like, I was enjoying myself just because, again, like to me the metaphors used in this show are very powerful. It's like the things it has to say about identity, and like the way it lays out its characters. Like so Victorique in particular, like her parents are a magician and a dancer, and like these are both careers that rely entirely on emotional intelligence. Like you have to literally be like captivating your audience. You have to be as charismatic as humanly imaginable to do these two jobs, and there's almost no logic to them. Like you cannot code a dance. You cannot. I mean, you can choreograph a dance, but like that's usually for like a one-time event, and it's not sexy to do that necessarily. You know, and for a magician, you know, if somebody knew how your tricks are done, then it loses all its magic. So like, with these being the kinds of parents that Victorique has, she thinks like them because she does understand the world similarly. However, like her family has had, you know, problems and trauma related to the way that, you know, that emotional the emotional thinking leads to trauma, you know? Like, if you don't have something to protect you, that is how you get... When you are putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, that is when you get hurt, you know? So, like, Victorique is somebody who spent most of her life, like, literally locked up and shut away and, like, not able to experience, you know, humans to start, like, picking up information that she could use. So it's like, she got all this information from books, and she knows lots of things about the world from that, but, like, anything she hasn't experienced for herself yet is, like, you know, obviously going to be, like, a pretty huge, like, experience, you know, to take in all at once. Like, in the first episode, I think, is, like, the first time she's left the tower, like, and gone into the city ever.
Yeah, because she basically, like, lived in there. It's the hunch that it gives you. I think that might be more for the meme, but it's implied.
Right. So it's, like, she, you know, she's literally, like... Even though she has, like, incredible amounts of knowledge, like, she just has no experiences and therefore no ability to, like, be unguarded because, like, you know, and I think that Lolita fashion in general is, has a lot to do with emotional guardedness. I think that, like, most people who wear Lolita are trying to be somebody else. Like, they are trying to...
It kind of speaks to, like... Maybe not like an alter ego, but like something that Victorique might be hiding.
I would say it speaks to like body dysmorphia and like, you know, just not being comfortable with yourself and not being comfortable with like showing yourself. You know, you don't want people to see you, whether because you don't like the way you look or just you don't like people seeing that much of you because it makes you feel vulnerable, you know? So it's like you're hiding yourself under as many clothes as possible, as many laces, as many frills, as many things to divert your attention from the person who is underneath the clothes, you know?
Yeah.
Which is why she looks like a doll, and people can, you know, say that she looks like a doll. She looks emotionless because she's putting up all these barriers between her and her emotions, you know? So it's like... and obviously the fact that she lives at the top of a fucking labyrinth, you know, like, and there's a lot of, even when she's in like a house, there's like a pink house at the back of a corn maze.
Which is like, her house.
You know, it's all just like metaphors for the idea that you've trapped your emotions behind this labyrinth that even you can't like navigate through, you know? And so like, you know, the fact that Cujo can literally, like, is enough of a safeguard that she can literally leave the labyrinth and, like, go out into the sun and, like, be a human.
Makes it pretty apparent.
There's a
what
moment
it's going for.
When you get to episode, I think it was episode 12, where she was wearing the purple outfit, right?
I believe that was 10.
Okay, so when you get to
because we
10,
watched we watched 11 and 12 today.
Right.
Was the purple episode last night?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
But there's
I
an
think it's
episode
10.
where she is wearing a like in the first few, she's always wearing all black goth lolly. Then she's suddenly, as she's opening up more, she's wearing like almost pastel purple with like way less covering of her body. Like she's got more of her arms exposed. It's like, you know, it's a summer day, but she's like, you know, literally toning down and like expressing more by like having color involved.
And if you notice in the background, a lot of because that's the kind of style in this era that the anime set in that people would wear. So you also notice a lot of background characters are also kind of wearing the same thing. So it's not as obviously her being the main character, it's more pronounced on Victorique, but in the background, if you'll notice, like a lot of the men, just like Cujo, are wearing suits, and the girls are showing a little bit more flesh, but they're still in like a Victorian era looking gown or dress, or it varies, but you know.
And I mean, like, when you consider the colors as well, like I was saying that, you know, Cujo, I mean, his name literally means, like, black, doesn't it? So, like, he
the Black Reaper is what they call him.
Yeah, he's the Black Reaper. He wears black. He's, and, I mean, I consider, you know, obviously, Japan, almost everyone has black hair, so, like, it's, you know, usually if there's a main character who's meant to sort of be a Japanese everyman, there will be a black-haired character. And, like... So black is kind of seen as like neutral, you know, and like again, like the male presence, and you know, I'm saying male, but I really just mean like in terms of the way that like it's presented in media. is like that of the neutral protective force. Like, you know, you wear all black because you are to blend in and be, you know, you are to be the assassin that protects the queen, you know.
Yeah, that's a good parallel to
and so like at the start, Victorique is also wearing black. She is basically, you know, narratively, in terms of this story at least, she's functionally like acting like a man. You know, she's acting like she herself is inexpressive and cold and calculating. She does not want to be that way, though. And like in her private time, she sings to herself more than speak. She's like very expressive, very emotional. She cries all the time. Anything that, you know, he does to her, she feels really bad, but she can't admit it. So, like, even though he will notice before, like, he literally will just tell her, like, oh, you're being stubborn. Like, you know, I'm not gonna treat you like a baby, basically. Like, I know that you are emotional, but, like, I'm not going to help you until you admit it, you know?
And to sing more of the show's praises, just them wearing black, I think that if you'll notice it, maybe you'll have to watch GOSICK a second time, but the metaphors for that too it's very obvious. Like that's why, like, them wearing black.
Right.
There's constant metaphors because it is a mystery story. So even just calling Cujo the Black Reaper, like obviously, like there is some kind of like there's some context into symbolism.
Right.
Writing throughout the entire show, the entire production is like that.
Yeah, I really think that the approach that the author had to this story was like, you know, I think they knew exactly what they wanted these two characters to be, what they were going to explore with them, and everything in the story was built around.
And that's why you immediately just knew, like, you were like, okay, so now I can see where they're gonna add Victorique's character, like like her archetype, and put Cujo in there, and like it makes sense.
Right.
And then also on top of that, I didn't, because I know we're just doing a retrospective or a review of the first 12 episodes because I don't want to spoil anything. Back to like when you were saying, when I don't know if you knew their names, but Albert and Cordelia DeBlois, Victorique's parents, being so quirky and weird like that actually has a lot to do with why what you noticed with her emotions, like why she's so fucked up and why she's so hidden like that, and expresses it out to Cujo, and that's all. That all kind of combines itself with that symbolism of just like there's some shit that's just so obvious, but that will make it an easier character study into understanding who Victorique and Cujo are as people. Yeah, you know, and it's they might beat you over the head with it, but I think it's effective, and you know, if you want to appreciate them, especially since you said that you related to Victorique so much, which wasn't what I was expecting for you to say.
Yeah, well, it's just like the symbolism they use for her character is like the same kind of way that I would look at myself, you know, again, like a garden at the heart of a labyrinth, you know, like that kind of, or as I said on Twitter the other day, like blood of magma, skin of iron, petabyte cyberbrain, heart of silk. That's my body composition. But yeah, I mean, I see it like as, you know, when you are somebody who has, you know, basically never felt like the ability to connect with other people because you are afraid, then it's like the only thing that is going to teach you how to do that is somebody who just makes you feel safe, you know? And like culturally, there are a lot of people, I think that this is going to get a little bit political, but that's like, okay. I think that like the way that, there's a lot of people out there who are in a really rough emotional state, and they do not have anybody who can be their shield, you know, who can be their Cujo. And, like, the more damaged you are, the harder, like, the more those people will have to put up with. Like, in this show, like, Victorique is abusive. She, like, hits him, she throws shit at him, she, like, you know, she's mean.
She's the closest thing to tsundere that I wouldn't quite classify as tsundere, because at her heart she's really not. But yeah, not like something I would compare to like Taiga or Stella. She's pretty
much in love with him from the start, but it's just about admitting it, you know.
But she won't admit anything at the start, so it's you know, that's kind of how it goes. You got to open up. She's got to open up a little bit, and Cujo gets that out of her.
I mean, it's like a perfect metaphor that like she can literally dump a pile of books on him while he's climbing up the stairs,
and he'll simp it.
doesn't care, and then like he literally like flicks her in the forehead as a tease, and she like bursts into tears and won't talk to him all day.
That's a great scene.
So it's just like, she's really fragile, but it's like for Cujo, it's easy enough for him to deal with that part of her, and he's interested because he like sees her like, well, obviously she's like greatly talented, and like it would be better if somebody could help her because like she's useful in a way that he might not consider himself to be, except in service to her,
And that's one of his most redeeming qualities. But the one thing that's always odd with people who talk to me about GOSICK is that I have Cujo like on my like top 10 favorite anime characters list, but if you look at it, like I really don't have this like strong connection to him really. I mean, obviously the show overall I do, but he is very just average. Like, and that's what makes him so endearing. Like, it's almost like less is more with him. And just, like, the little shit you were explaining, just, like, and he flicks her on the head. Like, he just seems like a normal dude, He's just some simp fuckboy,
it's that, like, he's somebody for whom, like, black is his natural state, Like, he is actually... He is actually the person who Victorique is pretending to be.
Right. There's a story in there, but he just doesn't show it because he just seems like such a normal kid,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, I guess it's just like, Victorique is forcing herself to do something that for him is his comfort zone. And so, like, for him to be able to, like, just do that for her, it's like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just like go into my comfort zone, which is like
helps him, but like Victorique is pretty much bringing him on her ride.
Right.
Like Cujo would not be doing mystery solving or helping if it was not for Victorique. So their entire relationship together is what forms all of GOSICK, and which is why when I said the characters that are important are very pronounced, that's a perfect example. It's like Cujo, Victorique, Greville. Very like even I think if you watch I think Albert and Cordelia are only in like and I know you haven't seen the last half, but I think they're at most in like 5 episodes. So like not they don't want the characters that don't really have a big effect to be on screen a bunch, and then that's when you start seeing Albert come in a lot, the redheaded Victorique's father, and that would be spoilers for the last 12 episodes because he's very important, but I won't get into that.
So like. Hold on, give me a second to think about what I was gonna say.
Oh, sorry, I kind of
the brother character. I was interested in him as well because he's the way that they set him up. They end up subverting when they actually tell you like what he's really about. Because like when he's first introduced, it's this detective.
Quirky.
I guess it's kind of a spoiler to say it's her brother, but like they kind of spoil it in the next episode before they explain it.
I think it's obvious. I don't know. That's not a spoiler. I think it's obvious.
Yeah, well,
because his first scene, he's literally in the tower with Victorique, and it's like how many blonde characters are in the show. To me, it's fairly obvious
there are a few, but I mean
that mean anything. I should say
he's a detective who like is presented as this like kind of douchebag who only cares about like scoring with chicks, and he's got his hair is a gigantic dick drill. Like, it's a he's supposed to be like this
a gel drill.
He comes off as like an arrogant, like overcompensating asshole. Like he's got this, even though he has like an effeminate kind of foppish voice, and he's wearing like a I don't know. I guess he looks kind of metrosexual, but like he's wearing a giant pompadour and like flirting with girls. So like,
and he wears an ascot.
And like at first he's presented as like he's kind of like an idiot who needs Victorique to explain things for him, but it's not really so much like that. It's really more that he thinks similarly to her, but is not emotionally repressed the way that she is.
Yeah.
But he is, like, putting on a false character because of the fact that there's a girl that he's in love with that is unrequited.
Yeah.
And Victorique, like, I don't exactly understand. I guess because of the fact that the woman he's in love with, at least, I don't know if this is true later in the story, but at least they think that she killed someone, right?
Yes, and just to put into like an overall context that doesn't spoil, if you want like me to give you like a character study on Greville, is he has the same talents as Victorique, but uses her because she is smarter.
Right.
And that doesn't make him invaluable, though. Like, he still has those talents, but he'll use her because she is just so much more autistic and good at this shit.
Yeah,
so,
she is his human computer to his mad scientist. But like,
and it runs in the family. They will use each other. That's
and I guess I would now that I've drawn the comparison to the mad scientist thing, he's actually kind of similar to Okabe from Steins Gate in that it is a put on act that like.
Yeah.
When you see him in the past, like, he's got long hair, he seems like just like a really sensitive dude, like kind of androgynous, and like, he's in love with this girl, but like it's like a really emotional connection, like he really is obsessed with her, and it's like, since he can't have her, he cannot be a sincere person with other people. It's like he puts on this clown act so that he can like, flirt with other girls, but he can't be real with them because he's not in love with any of them. He's only in love with this one girl who he can be real with, So it's like all the posturing. At first, you think it's because he's not self-aware, but it's not because he's not self-aware.
Right.
In fact, it is completely self-aware.
And that's an even broader scope because when I think of GOSICK, it's kind of funny to hear that because Greville is so. I know I said earlier that they pronounce the main characters and have like a very small cast of people that are important, which is true. But everything that kind of goes on with him, when I think of what makes GOSICK's plot so important, Greville is not a big part of it. So like seeing you read so far into like his romance and shit, I'm like, there's shit that's more important than that, but it's fucking fun to hear somebody else's opinion on it because I mean, obviously you're emotionally connected to Victorique, so her having a sibling might
I guess it's that I also
respond.
connect to him because of the fact that like I guess I did something similar in like for me because people have talked about like there's a lot of people for whom me like transitioning and coming out was not a surprise at all because they'd heard me talk about gender identity a lot. There are some people to whom it was a huge surprise because they had not listened to all of my talks about that.
Right.
And like the way I present myself in my videos has always been like sunglasses and beard and like a drunken like asshole. And like to me, and this was like the biggest disconnect between me and a lot of my audience because like the people who really were keeping up with my stuff and talking to me in person and like really knew what was going on understood that this was a parody. Like it's a character. It's an ironic parody of like a overly like a drunken homeless guy.
Well, as is everybody's internet personality.
Right.
Yeah.
Like. Yeah. Why would you just assume that like
me and you have been hanging, but like you're with Butthole Weeb. It's like I'm a normal person, but like I'm a totally different person online.
Right.
I'm a totally different person.
Exactly.
I'm not transitioning or anything like that, but I can see where what parallel you're pulling to Greville.
Yeah, that like for me it's like if I wanted to be like completely emotionally honest on the internet, then I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for things that I legitimately will legitimately hurt me. It's like so like if I can put up a character where everything that you can make fun of me for, I don't care because it's not the real me. It's like you can make fun of me for having like a scraggly facial hair and like and wearing sunglasses indoors, but like that's the joke, you know. So of course you're supposed to make fun of that.
And like, I relate so hard to that too because I mean the more that you put it into words, the more I realize things about myself in that way too. It's like you know what, I am the same way because you can make fun of Butthole Weeb as much as you want because that's the point.
Right.
It's Landon,
it's an ironic parody of like literally like Butthead from Beavis and
exactly
Butthead.
Like it's just like anything that you could possibly make fun of is I don't care because it's just an internet gimmick. It's like me as Landon can come and hang out with Digi and May, and and I can see more now that we're thinking about it why Greville is kind of like that, and like Okabe from Steins Gate because like they do put off this quirk, like this some kind of persona that obviously isn't them, but it's like the polar opposite,
Right. Well, it's like it's that because I see it as like I think that. There's two like types of emotions that people will feel towards one another, which is like you either like want to protect someone in a very like literal sense, like I want to make it so they can live, so that they they can provide for me whatever they do like emotionally, and then there's people who want to provide something emotionally, and like anybody can do both, and you can have a good balance of the two. But I do think that like a lot of the basis for like where gender roles in society come from is that like predominantly men tend to want to be in the role of like, I'm going to like take care of your livelihood so that you can take care of my emotions,
Yes.
And like,
yeah.
And so I think that in the case of Greville, he is somebody who is more the type to take care of somebody's emotions, and that's why he's presented as kind of androgynous.
Yes. Yes.
And like the girl that he's into is like a hard worker. She's like somebody who's, probably sees herself as somebody who like, basically, the guy she's going to be married off to, she was going to just be a housewife, and that's why they think she killed him.
And it's very against her character because she kind of seems like she's just like blue collar and
right.
What do you want to call it, an emotionally strong woman,
right?
As to where Greville is not a emotionally strong man,
right? Yeah, he would rather. I think he would kind of be better served as like being her house husband in a way.
Exactly. You reverse the gender roles.
Magica family kind of situation.
That's a really good. Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. I would say that's almost opposite to like Rakudai, where it's like if you're thinking of a relationship like Stella and Iki, he doesn't really need her in any way, It's like she almost needs him in a way, but they're both very broken people. In
Rakudai, I feel like because I kind of get it because for me, when I was a young man, when I thought I was a young man, we'll say, my mentality was like, because I felt so disconnected from my identity, it's like I kind of projected like, I guess like the way I see it is that to me that kind of like masculinity, where it's like all I exist for is to like protect someone else. Like to me, it was kind of like it doesn't matter who it is in a way. It's like
if any kind of connection.
If your purpose is just to be a provider, then like as long as there's literally anything, then it'll be fine. And that was kind of the approach I had with my first relationship, and it did not go well. Because like we really didn't have that strong of a connection. There were tons of things we disagreed on, but I just kind of always thought like, well, I'll just let it slide because what does it really matter? Like who am I? I don't even know who I am, so like it doesn't really matter.
As relationships will go.
Right, and so like after that, my mentality was like, I'm not going to get with somebody unless like I'm confident that we actually have enough in common that like.
And that's why you and Pensy Party are the same person.
Right. Yeah.
That's why you're the same person.
The meme is that we are just the male and female on the character select.
Is it equivalent?
Which one's which? I don't know. You can never tell. So yeah, like. Fuck, what was I saying? Yeah, well, in Rakudai, I guess I see it as like the character. It just has like. Again, it's the problem of the harem situation where like when you are in that mentality, then it's like, oh, if any girl will do, then why limit yourself to one?
Right.
And so like, even though like I think that the author of Rakudai obviously like. Thinks that having like a strong monogamous relationship is a positive. He still wants to have the little sister on the dick as much as he can, and like in GOSICK, it's not like that. It's like a much more chaste kind of trad relationship.
Well,
I guess.
Especially because it's already
set in the 1920s as well.
Right,
so that probably adds to it.
But also adding just the fact that. The entire world, like the scope of everything is set in Europe, and then Kujo just the fact that he is Japanese and he's just getting planted into the story is already going to make it a totally different. It's something like I've never seen in really any other anime. Like him, a Japanese boy coming into Europe, and then obviously there's a love story in there that we don't have to get too into, but like that kind of weird, the way that they meet. I've never seen in like any other anime. It's so much different than like as to where Rakudai, obviously, they're all going to these super-powered fighting schools.
I'll tell you what I think the thinking was behind that, because generally, like, these are shows where usually the characters are drawn together by the fact that they are both the biggest outsiders in the community.
Yes.
Like,
to make it more relatable.
Iki was like the 0 power or whatever, like, and whereas Stella's like the highest power.
Yeah, she's rank A and he's rank F.
Right,
yeah.
And then in this case, it's like Victorique is literally like isolated from everyone, and he is kind of socially isolated because he's a Japanese guy and like literally just showed up and like nobody knows who he is and he's scary. They're all afraid of him because he's fucking the Black Reaper.
Because he's in a totally different world that he's used to. A totally different environment is what I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could compare Rakudai more to GOSICK the more I think about like you analyzing why I like the two so much. But with Iki, he's like the place that they're in, like the where the environment of the school is, like everyone's doing it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As to where GOSICK is, sure, it's still like their high school age and everything, but Kujo is coming from like across the fucking world into this totally different environment and country, and he doesn't really, to me, like. Yeah, I know he's a fuckboy and he's kind of a generic, just like main anime protagonist. Even though I think, in my opinion, Victorique is way more important. It doesn't really have like that generic light novel, like the usual tropes that you would use like on a light novel. Because I know you've read a lot that are probably just like this one setting is. I've read this 100 times. Yeah. GOSICK is one that I find a lot more rare as to where. How often do you watch an anime where only one of the main characters is actually Japanese?
Right.
You know, like it's very
in a fictional country in 1924.
Yeah, in Sawville. It's very odd. It's very odd.
I think a lot of what GOSICK is going for and what sets it apart is that I think it was trying to be like equally appealing to boys and girls in a way that most light novels aren't. Like a lot of light novels are like this is like a male power fantasy and like GOSICK...
That's true. Like, I didn't think about that.
Well, GOSICK is like... Kujo is the main character, but like... Victorique is always there. It's not... Again, he doesn't really bounce between girls the same way that... Like, there's one other girl... I think that... I don't know. I almost feel like the author maybe even regretted putting her in. Because like, she kind of disappears from the story. Like, it doesn't do a lot.
And she doesn't again. So, yeah, don't worry about her.
So, like... You know... I don't know if, like, maybe, you know, the author, like, wasn't quite sure what they were doing with the story early on, but, like, you know, you get the sense that they really wanted it to be, like, this is about the relationship of these two characters, and, like, whether you connect to either one of them, like, you would have an equally valid experience of this, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And I think about, again, like, Andrew Cunningham... and the kind of stuff that he translates, because he's a huge fan of Boogie Pop and Monogatari, which all kind of are similarly... I put them all in the same kind of category tonally, where, like, even though GOSICK, I think, is aimed at a younger audience than Monogatari or Boogie Pop is, they all have similar relationship portrayals. Like, the relationship of the main guy of the first chapter of the first book of Boogie Pop, who is, like, the... Because Boogie Pop is a male alter ego of a girl named Toka. And so... I think Boogie Pop... He refers to himself with male pronouns, but considers himself agender.
Okay, because I never had the full context. I thought it was something like that, but I've never read it.
He's like an agender, alternate, magical personality that lives inside of this girl named Toka. And then... her boyfriend is, like, very similar to Kujo in the way he's presented. It's, like, the very standard Japanese man who is going to get a good job and provide for his girlfriend, you know? And he's, like, just everything is set for him in life. But, like, he is, like, basically the foil to everyone else in the story for whom that is not true at all. But, like, in Monogatari, it's kind of like Araragi fills a similar role for, you know, Senjo Gahara. Their interactions are like a much more advanced version of the interactions in GOSICK. But again,
Monogatari has seen, of course it would be.
But Monogatari also has the problem of being a shitty romance after the first show, because then he has to fuck all his sisters for the next 3 seasons. And
what?
Because Araragi is like constantly just doing like weird sexual shit with little girls all throughout the show, so
I've seen
it kind of harshes on the central romance element for me just a little bit between him and Senjo when he's like like molesting his sisters all the time, but
So if you're back to what you're saying about like GOSICK being aimed at like both men and women. I don't know if you knew this. Do you know Kazushi Sakuraba, the author of GOSICK, is a woman? So I actually
that makes sense. That makes the most sense to me
because so like if you've read any of her other works, that's when you were like. Because I never.
What else has she written?
I don't know anything off the top of my head, but they because I have just watched or I read them on an app. But Kazuchi Sakuraba does. She's never had any other anime adaptations. Just GOSICK is like the most popular one, and GOSICK is fairly popular. But since she is a girl, I kind of can see the way I view GOSICK is like. Obviously, I'm a guy, and I enjoyed it for every single facet that the show represents, everything that it means, and especially what it means to me. But like, I wouldn't really know like a woman's opinion going into it, but it does seem kind of like because I've never seen Monogatari, so like I wouldn't know. But like, it kind of does seem like it would be aimed for really anyone, and that's what I mean. Even if you think it's boring, which I understand, I can fully understand. I mean, even if I have like an emotional attachment to it, it's not like I would ever be offended if somebody was like, "Yeah, this show's boring as fuck." But like. The author is a woman and has written. I mean, I've read 3 of her works, and I think she's only ever done 6, like 6 books or whatever. And GOSICK was the only one to get adapted to animation. And the way GOSICK reads compared to her other works is like, it doesn't really seem like it's aimed at, even though she is a woman, it doesn't seem like it's aimed for both audiences. It's more just like. It all reads the same, like to me at least. It's kind of like she has the same slow-paced, very story-driven works, and not. I mean, even I'd have to look it up. I mean, I could look on my phone at some of the names of the other ones I've read. Like I said, it's been like fucking 6 years, so I can't remember their names. But from what I've read from Kazuchi Sakuraba, she doesn't really aim exactly at a certain demographic, so maybe that's why GOSICK just feels so weird to me. Like, think about if I'm watching Love Live, like who do you think Love Live is aimed at?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you look at GOSICK and it's like, you're kind of right in the sense that it's like maybe it was just aimed at everybody, you know. And I mean, maybe that's the appeal.
I think in many ways, because for me, I have a tendency, and I think I said this to you like yesterday, that the ways that we deal with other people are based on the ways that we deal with ourselves.
Yes.
It's like when we're able to call somebody out on something, it's usually something that is also a problem with us, which is why we can recognize it. And like this is even kind of presented in the show where like the first time that Cujo like recognizes a flaw in Victorique, it's that she has too much pride, when that's like literally his entire downfall is his pride.
He can immediately break that barrier right there. He's like, I can see through your bullshit.
Right, because I'm even more prideful than you are. Right. You know? And I know it's unhealthy because it's kind of the the number one thing I get shit for.
He gets it.
So like, with that in mind, like. The better we know our own flaws, the better we understand that other people who share them, and like shows, better we appreciate shows that are about conquering them, and like, I think that like GOSICK is a show that it can be taken internally as like as just literally. Represent the characters representing logic and emotions, like within yourself. Like you could view yourself as both characters, and as the relationship between them being the same as the relationship between your own logic and emotions, or you could choose to look at it as the way you deal with other people, whether you are a more logical or more emotional person, and whether that has been a problem or a good thing in your relationships, so it's like I think that's what makes a show like this, again, like work for everyone, is that it's addressing things that exist inside of everyone, but between both characters,
Yeah, with all the shows that you compared, like trying to analyze why I would like something like that, with Toradora and Rokudai being some of the ones we've talked about, I can't think of, I mean, you might have, maybe your encyclopedia of the anime might come in. I can't really think of another anime that has that, at least like a a similar example of that kind of relationship.
I mean, those are makes some of the best ones, for presenting that.
I'm trying to think of one, maybe like Sakute Inayo or something, but I'm trying to think of...
There's probably more that are not explicitly romance shows, but just have that, element of... I mean, again, I think Shirayuki Hime is another
that was another
example.
One. Yeah.
And that one's, again, about a very strong-willed woman, and the main character is the prince, who's more emotional and doesn't really want to have to do any of the logistical stuff he has to do as the prince, whereas she literally enjoys having responsibilities and tending to things, but again, they help each other to sort of meet in the middle there. So tropes are good. They help you learn about the world.
At least that helped you guys. I didn't really think that you would enjoy it as much as you did, which makes me happy that I would say I finally memed it.
My biggest problem with the show is just simply that I think that everything that has to do with the themes is really well done in terms of all the symbolism, keeping everything in the story consistent and coherent and all feeding back into the center of itself. The biggest problem is just that the dialogue is not especially great, and so even though I think the characters are well realized, they are not necessarily the most interesting characters of their archetypes. Oh, another show that's the same relationship is Dance in the Vampire Bund, and that's also blonde lolly with a guy who has almost the exact same relationship.
Except GOSICK's better. In
the case of Dance in the Vampire Bund, Mina Tepe is a 50-something-year-old vampire, so there's there's differences in the way she's presented versus GOSICK. I actually think GOSICK's a more realistic and probably actually better written character than Mina Tepe is, from what I've read of Dance of Vampire Bund, which is not a ton, but but it's more style driven anyways. I would say that Toradora would be an example of a show that I would consider a better written version of the romance side of this show, and it's not as tight in its thematic presentation. And it also doesn't really dive as much into the traumas of the characters as I can tell GOSICK is going to.
That's the thing with GOSICK when you said tight. It is you will emotionally know every single fucking thing about these people as to where to me I almost don't I don't want to say I disagree, but with Toradora it was great anime. I loved it, but it's it almost felt like it was too long for the point they're trying to make. To me, GOSICK gets in and gets out, and it makes its point.
Had 3 or 4 more episodes than it needed to. But it's just a consequence of you either do 13 or 26,
Or you could read 9 volumes of GOSICK and sit here and no, 24 episodes is all it needed. Yeah. That's all it needed. And by the way, the book was by the same author of GOSICK, Red Girls is the name of it. Same writing style, very slow, but like I said, character driven, but not that many characters. How Victorique and Cujo are the most important facet of the entirety of GOSICK's production. A lot of her shit reads like that. But I think she's only made 6 books, something like that. I've read GOSICK, Red Girls, and there was another one that I can't remember, but I found it, and I definitely wouldn't say Toradora was like any of her writing, but I guess the character dynamics are. I can see where you're drawing that from. Was there any other shows that, or you said the Vampire Bund?
Yeah, Dance in the Vampire Bund is kind of similar.
Is there an anime to that, or is that just a book?
There was only 13 episodes, but the manga is long as fuck.
I'll take that as a recommendation.
Is there anything that you
I was gonna say
about GOSICK, since we literally just went off?
I did bail. I left for a bit, just because I haven't seen these shows that you're talking about, and I find it really hard to kind of come away with the position without seeing the whole entire show. I'm interested in finishing it. I think I enjoyed the mysteries more than both of you guys as sort of a mystery fan. Yes, I was just interested more in to see where the story was going, where it was going to go. Yeah, I liked it. The backgrounds are really cool. Mm-hmm. I liked some of the shots of the trains. Thought it was really cool.
It is a very good-looking show.
The consistency of the animation was kind of there was one episode that was just episode 11, I believe, that I really I just laughed at, but I had fun. It didn't make the show unwatchable for me. And the next episode definitely was there was lots of outfits, there was lots of really cute expressive animation. So it was a trade-off. I think that was well made.
GOSICK, I think, has an unfortunate reputation production-wise because it's, like, one of the worst-looking Bones shows, but, like, being one of the worst-looking Bones shows is, like, being one of the best-looking shows from anywhere else. Like, it looks great. It looks like, it kind of reminds me of, Ashton Onaja from, like, 2003 or something like that, but it's got, like, a similar kind of aesthetic palette, and, like, I don't know, that show looks good. This show looks good.
That was probably my worst, the worst quote in that entire long-ass blog post I did on, like, when I was just gushing about GOSICK was, I think I said, quote-unquote, I would go out of my way to say this show has the greatest animation and art I've ever seen. And I was like, and I was like...
Then you watched Space Dandy.
Yeah,
like, wait a minute.
And then I was like, that was a product of, like, yeah, I definitely said that in, like, 2014, like, a year after I watched GOSICK, before I had seen hundreds of shows. But, yeah, I'm just glad that you guys at least liked how it looked, you know, and everything. I just, the only thing I'm afraid of is... I got you guys to like the first half, but are you going to watch the last without me? I'm scared. I don't know what the future holds.
I'm excited to finish watching it. I feel like there may be, like, more of a tonal change.
I like watching it really high, so, you know, it's fun. And obviously it's going to get darker, and, like, I don't know.
The tonal shift is, I'm not fucking with you.
Yeah,
it's
feel
dramatic. You
I
honestly hate it.
I have enough,
like
trust in the author to think that, like, at the very least, the themes will remain coherent. I mean, obviously, you like the show for that reason, so, like, I don't doubt that element will continue to hold up at the very least, you know?
The show just, it represents everything that I personally, I don't want to get into it, but, like, everything that I personally believe in, like, politically, and I'm not very knowledgeable in that, but, like, at least when I was growing up, especially since I watched it in 2013, so I would have been, 15 or something like that. Just, like, being, like, a teenage anarchist, we kind of watched some lighthearted episodes if we're just going to do a retrospective on the first 12 episodes. Yeah. But, my God, if you've ever seen, like, a tonal shift, like, I'm imagining, I've never seen it, but I'm imagining, like, in Sangatsu no Lion, how, like, you thought it was the whole package, you know, it's dramatic, or, you know, makes you think about your past, and then sometimes it's funny. Like, GOSICK kind of starts out that way, but when it comes to, like, the tone of the show, it gets from 100 down to 0. Like, it's like, Revolutionary Wars? What the fuck are we watching here? I was just watching this fucking lolly puff her cheeks and go ho 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 ho. But no, it dips. You know,
episode 12 was very much you know, having watched a lot of anime, I know that, like, there's a lot of shows that structure themselves, especially Bones. Bones likes to structure their shows around, like, the 2 seasons being completely different. Like, Zetsuen no Tempest had, like, a major time skip, like, halfway through. I'm trying to think of another good example. I know Kurao Phantom Memory has something like that. Like, they really like to just, like, have these kind of major shifts. And obviously this is based on a source material, but, like, the way that they laid out the anime adaptation is, like, the first 12 episodes is everything before the shift. The second 12 episodes is everything after the shift. And episode 12 is the cute one. It's, like, the episode where nothing happens. It's That's just odd. Character building. It's just, like, adorable. And then it's like, all right, now we're going to get into the action, you know?
I say it seems like Bones can't really finish shit like that. Like, a lot of people that I've shown GOSICK were like, because I'm a big Bones connoisseur, and they don't have, like, the same reputation as Gainax as to where, like, finishing up the show is bad, but, like,
ending the fucking story.
I'm the one guy over here who's read the books. I'm like, I'm fine with the ending, but the consensus everyone's come to is, like, GOSICK's probably like an 8.5. Like, you know, like, they all love it, but, like, Wolf's Rain, for example, like, I thought that show's tone when it comes to, like, I guess early Studio Bones is boring as fuck, but then, like, the OVA, what was it, 4 episodes, is one of the best shows I've ever seen. So it's like, what pedestal do you put on?
Is by far the best part of the show.
Yeah, that was
the last 4 episodes.
I totally agree. But yeah, I figured that we'd do a round table. I obviously know your favorite character, May. Any favorite characters in GOSICK?
My favorite character is the teacher.
Teacher's not
I forgot about her.
Yeah, she's really fucking
her. I also like the main boy. I love that he's a fuckboy. He's really funny.
This is what I've tried to sell you guys on for so long, because I'm like, if you do watch the last half, and I know that we're not doing it now, we're just reviewing the first half. If you ever watch it, the point well, you guys actually appreciate it. Most of the other people that I've made watch GOSICK always complain about Cujo because he is a fuckboy. And I'm like, okay, so I've literally completed over 700 anime, so it's like I have more experience watching characters kind of like him, but I'm like, that's the fucking point. He's a fuckboy. That is the point. So just give him a chance for just like a little bit longer. But yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the teacher because she in the novels as well, she's actually really not all that important. Right. So in the anime,
a lot is added by the character design and voice acting and animation with her.
I mean, it seems like all your guys' favorite characters are just because they were like animated cute.
I mean, Victorique is just like like literally my self-image, so it's like there's no gaps, like I mean everybody else is like fine, I guess. It's just, again, like, to me, I think I would enjoy the novels more than the show because I would get to like, I just feel like it would flow more naturally. Like I do think the show is like too Spartan. I think it cuts out too much, and it makes it so like I like the characters more for like the idea of them than for like actually watching the show to experience time with the characters. Sure.
Oh, and that was the other thing I was gonna say. Sorry, I was gonna go back to about you talking about Bones shows having lots of time skips. Mm-hmm. GOSICK, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but is also a factor in that. There's like, especially in the books, because Cujo and Victorique become much older later, and like I said, it becomes like a Detective Conan thing. But in the anime, it's only the story of the first book of Sawville, where they're in Europe. Because afterwards, they travel to New York, and several volumes of the novel are set in New York. So when you're watching these 24 episodes that Bones adapted, it's like, yeah, it also has a time skip, but to me, it's more effective than some of their other works. Right. Because the time skip is... God, I can't say anything without spoiling it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna cut myself off.
We'll have to eventually one day get together again to talk about the second half.
Yes,
of
we will.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And of course.
And then when us talking about it has made everybody rewatch it and on streaming services,
spark the popularity,
causing the books to finally get translated. Then we'll be able to discuss the books, or I could just learn Japanese.
Just don't
we'll see what happens first.
Just don't get a Japanese teacher and be a degenerate fuck like me.
Well, we managed to talk for 80 minutes about GOSICK.
I really appreciate you guys.
You thought this would be like 30 minutes long.
Well, because I just wanted to get out of your guys' hair. But I really appreciate you guys even taking the time to watch it. I know that it was meme-worthy, but, I had a great time doing it. I'm glad you guys at least somewhat enjoyed it.
I'm glad I was reminded again, once more, how Yuki Aoi is the best. Yep. And I'm going to restart my voice training by just like getting together like a clip of everything Yuki Aoi's ever said and then just listening to it on repeat until I mind wash myself into sounding like Yuki Aoi.
That'd be a great way to do it, wouldn't it?
So, I have to listen to like her later roles because obviously I am not a 16-year-old like she was when she recorded this show, but like
it's hard to believe that it's like 9 years old now. Isn't that fucking nuts? Right? It's like we're all getting old. Can we get a round table rating? Do you got like a rating for the first 12 episodes? For the first half,
I would give it just like a 7 out of 10, I think.
I'll take it.
Are these like separate seasons or just like
it's just all one?
I can't rate it without seeing the full thing.
All right, we'll wait.
I can't do it. I would say I'd probably give it like a 7 to a 9 in that kind of just.
So it could be anywhere in that range depending on how it goes.
Well, depending on how if it stays consistent, but I have no idea.
It gets so much better. I really wish you guys watched the last half.
We'll find out. Maybe my score will go up when I watch the second half.
I'll take a 7 out of 10. Let me get real close into the mic. It's a 10 out of 10, guys. It's a 10 out of 10. Perfect.
Do you have any parting words or anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I got a really shitty YouTube channel where I get drunk all the time and just get emotional analyzing anime at Landonime, Landonime. Nothing else.
Okay,
nothing else.
I'll probably call this just thoroughly analyzing GOSICK's episodes 1 through 12 with Butthole Weeb.
Yeah,
sounds good. Send me that thumbnail of snake sausage hairs girl.
Amazing.
May you have anything you want to say or plug?
Check out Corrupting Your Kids. I do podcasts and live streams there and Pantsuit Party. And be cool.
Thank you guys for having me.
Be cool and eat beehole.
Go watch GOSICK.
It's mealy as fuck.